Сегодня у нас в гостях Kjell Johnsen.
Добрый день.
Вы родились в Норвегии.
I'm a Norwegian, born and raised in Norway and lived there.
Вы работали и в сельхозиндустрии, или в логистической индустрии. Вот этот опыт вам потом помог в нашей индустрии?
You know, since I studied Russian when I did my military service, it was natural for me.
Мы с вами познакомились на одном лидершипе, и на гала-ужине мы сидели вместе.
Well, I'm inspired by my wife, and of course, in my Telenor days, we were also one of the sponsors of the Bolshoi Theater.
Вы сказали, что ваша супруга из Чимкента.
And of course, they were ethnically Russian, but they moved or lived their life in Ukraine. I think she was born, in Kazakhstan. She was born and raised there.
Хочу вернуться к Пакистану и Бангладешу.
But there was no conflict in Pakistan, and no, because VEON at that time. You mean when they bought the access from Saviris?
Да. Добрый день, уважаемые зрители. Мы продолжаем наш проект «Телеком жило» об истории развития отрасли связи. И сегодня у нас в гостях Kjell Johnsen, президент Tele2, всей группы Tele2 и бывший генеральный директор Вимпелком Россия, бывший операционный директор VEON Limited. Kjell, добрый день.
Добрый день.
Мой первый вопрос. Вы родились в Норвегии.
Absolutely. I'm a Norwegian, born and raised in Norway and lived there till I was an adult and started working internationally.
Мы с командой Билайн несколько лет назад во главе с Евгением Настрадиным посетили Норвегию и влюбились в эту страну. В природу, в народ, в культуру, в архитектуру.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place in terms of its nature, especially along the coast, I would say then, because I like the coastline. It's of course a small country, not many people, around 5 million, so it's the population of half of a big city in Europe or in the world. But due to its geographical location and the fact that it's a very long country, long and narrow, it may sometimes look bigger than it is maybe. But it's a safe and good place to grow up, and I'm very happy with the time I had there as a child, for sure.
Kjell, у вас хорошее образование. Вы менеджер, бизнес-администрейшн. Кем вы хотели стать? Какая ваша была жизненная стратегия? Как вы планировали? Какую профессию планировали?
I think like so many others when I was younger, and maybe also up until I was a teenager, I didn't really know. I just wanted to do something with my life. I wanted to experience things. I didn't want to be in one place, and I wanted to meet different kinds of people, but I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. So I was thinking to get an education is always the platform for getting opportunities. And then of course when I then got the opportunity to start working internationally, it appealed a lot to me. I liked that.
В отрасль связи вы пришли в 2000 году.
Yes.
А до 2000 у вас был большой такой производственный опыт. Вы работали и в сельхозиндустрии, или в логистической индустрии. Вот этот опыт вам потом помог в нашей индустрии?
You know, since I studied Russian when I did my military service, it was natural for me in my first job to go into something that was related to Russia, because it was opening up in 1992. It was in the land of fantastic opportunities. So I worked for a trading company that was working in the fish industry. We were also financing some of the vessels and these things, because it was a difficult time for businesses in Russia in 91, 92. The tax system was complicated, and all these things improved a lot after that. But in those days it was difficult. So I set up an office in Murmansk for this Swedish-Norwegian company and spent quite a lot of time there recruiting people. And I was with them for a few years. And then I was saying to myself, I don't probably want to be in a business that is mostly a trading business, even though I was learning from my bosses / owners until the day I left. They were very competent. And then I want to be working for a bigger company, so I started working for Norsk Hydro. Now it's called only Hydro. And actually the part of the business that I was in is now called Yara. It's maybe the biggest agricultural company in terms of fertilizers and these things. So I moved to the Ukraine to do a job for them. And they were setting up an office there in 1996. So it was a completely different industry. And again, needed to go out there, get to know people, meet the directors of the Selsjordschemi, and then have a little shot of vodka and a little bit of banya, and we got to know each other. I enjoyed it, but those 2 years were pretty hard on my liver.
Шелл, в 2000-м вы попали в Теленор.
Yes.
И проработали там 16 лет.
Mm-hmm.
Я, кстати, сейчас тоже в Билайне, сейчас идет 16-й год. 16 лет, это huge, это очень большой срок. Почему? Почему в Теленоре?
Well, I joined Telenor because, from an interesting point of view, we had some troubles in the Ukraine when I was working for Hydro around 98, 99. And in retrospect, I think some of those troubles came from things that also was related to our company at that time. There was nothing bad or criminal, it was just partnerships that didn't go well. And then I was not necessarily recommending Telenor to go into the Ukraine when they wanted to buy into Kyivstar. I said, at least you need to be careful about this and that. But they decided to go into Kyivstar, and they were right. It was a great investment for them. But I was in touch with them, and they were expanding internationally, and they wanted me to join in 2000. So I said yes. I was at that time living in Paris working for Hydro, but they wanted me to come in and help them and work on their international expansion as a middle manager. I was not a top manager at that time, but I was attracted to it. So I joined them in 2000. And when you ask me why 16 years, then it's because I did different things over those 16 years. To begin with, I was at the headquarters, I was on a couple of projects, but then they gave me the responsibility to follow up a company called Kombelga, set up by Vladimir Bulgak, and also by Alexander Kashanov, both of them coming out of the telecom ministry of the Soviet Union. Very, very good people. They didn't speak much English at all, so it was helpful for me that I could speak Russian. And we grew to respect each other. I asked them, I remember, to not only focus on EBITDA, but also they talked about return on capital employed, and I had to explain why. And I said, EBITDA is about the profit and loss, but the return on capital employed, you have to look at the balance sheet. So we have to look at how much do we invest to create this growth and these profits. And we set some targets, and they delivered better than the targets. Very loyal, very hardworking people, very reliable people. And then eventually we sold that to Golden Telecom. And that's when we started owning together with Alpha, because they were also shareholders there. And we were on the board together, and most of the time worked very well together, agreed about most things, and sometimes we could disagree, but that's life. That's the way it always is. And we sold eventually Golden Telecom to Wimpelcom or Beeline in Russia. That became more of a converged player. So the reason why I stayed so long with Telenor is that my job was changing. I went to Russia, Kombelga, then I joined the board of Golden Telecom, which was a quite substantial business. And then I joined the board of Beeline of Russia in 2007. And then I moved on. I got new opportunities. I became CEO of the Serbian operation, and I had a great team in Serbia, lots of really good people, and we were able to see this wave of pre to post migration, and we were doing everything we could to fuel that. So we had very good growth, very good profitability, which gave me the chance to become head of Europe for Telenor, which was Central Europe and the Nordics. And I did that for some years, and what do you know, all of a sudden, that was 15 years.
Да. Вы отметили, и вы управляли Теленор Россия. Вот в тот период Теленор, как и другие две скандинавские компании, Tele и Sonera, активно входили на рынок СНГ. И, по-моему, только единственные европейские компании. Я даже помню, в конце 90-х Теленор изучал возможность приобретения Казахтелекома в Казахстане. Почему Теленор пошел в страны СНГ? Не пошел в Франстелеком или Водафон и другие?
It goes back to historical relationships, because even throughout the Soviet Union and for centuries before that, there was always a trade going on in the north between Russia or the Soviet Union or whatever it was called. There was always a trade, and there has been a special visa regime also for many years there. So there were some bonds there, and I think that when it comes to Russia and Ukraine, almost every Norwegian was excited about this. We wanted both of these countries to do really well. We really wanted them to be a part of the European family. We felt it was a good thing to be exposed, to invest. It was almost purpose-driven to some extent. And we were, of course, very happy to see that we made a lot of money from it, at least for some time. But I think there was a strong sense of purpose, and we were very excited about that these two big countries were opening up and we could be a part of it. So that was very, very cool.
Вы и возглавляли Теленор европейские страны. Какой тогда был рынок? И в основном, я так понимаю, это была Центральная и Восточная Европа. Да? Какой тогда был рынок в этих странах ваш период? И какое место было у Теленора там?
Well, we had different positions. It was two distinctly different markets. Central Europe was, of course, Serbia, which I used to run, where we were number one in the market. We had Montenegro, we were also number one. And then we had Hungary, where we were number two. And then we bought into Bulgaria, where we were number two when we took over. And I'm happy to say that all those markets developed very well. We bought Bulgaria from OTE of Greece and Deutsche Telekom, who was an owner there. And the team that we sent in there, we saw a really nice, good improvement, strengthening of the position. In Serbia, we were number two, but we became number one because we saw this pre to post migration. I remember in 2009, MTS, now I'm talking about the Serbian MTS, had 50% market share. We had 30, something like that. And in 2012, we had 41 and they had 40. And in the meanwhile, the Austrians had built themselves up to a strong third position. So it was a dramatic change of positions.
А благодаря чему?
Because we saw that pre to post migration trend. People wanted to have postpaid subscriptions. We reduced our costs. And then we invested everything into the market. And I don't think they saw that trend. They were too focused maybe on the existing distribution, on the prepaid business, and also our visual impression, what we were portraying to the market resonated. It was more family values, it was solid, safe, but also with a level of excitement. I had a couple of people there who were so good at doing their job, and they have moved on. They do big things now. I'm very thankful for what they did for me there. And in the Nordics, we had Sweden and Denmark, which were mine. And Norway was run separately. And in Sweden, we were number 3 at that time. The objective was, of course, to become number 2 and overtake Tele2. That never happened. And now at Tele2, we are going to make very sure that there's going to be a big distance to number 3 and 4. So that's clear. And in Denmark, we were the number 2 in the market, in a very, very tough market. But that's the position we had, and we held on to it. So very different dynamics in those markets.
Шелл, а вы можете сказать еще про Теленор? Какая там была корпоративная культура и ценности? Вот, что вы можете выделить теленоровский период?
It was for a long time a very purpose-driven company in the sense that we thought that we were out there, not only at Telenor. I think many companies had that feeling, but it was very strong with us that we were going out there to all these countries, especially in Asia, and building connectivity for people. Giving people the access to connectivity was something that made us quite proud. And you saw that how this moved very, very fast over some years to almost ubiquitous communication everywhere. And I've spoken to our employees and others about it over the last few months, last year, because that purpose was very strong in those days. But then, of course, at some point, most countries had communications everywhere. You could pick up the phone and call or send a message or whatever you want to do. But now during COVID, I got that purpose back again, because I'm thinking, if COVID had come in 2010, there's no way we'll be able to run a modern society the way we did then. The video conferencing solutions, the broadband speeds, the mobile broadband speeds, these things, they were not there. So it felt really good that this industry could do so much to keep modern society working well throughout the pandemic. That was very strong.
Да. В 2000, фактически, 7 по 13 год вы являлись членом Совета директоров ПАО «Вимпелком», а в 2011-2015 вы ходили в наблюдательный совет «Вимпелком Limited».
Yes.
То есть вы ходили, ну, фактически в Советы директоров группы «Вимпелком» и VEON. Вот мой первый вопрос. Вы были и свидетелем конфликта Альфы и Теленор?
Yes, of course. I was very actively engaged in that, and I think, you know, partly some of those things probably could have been avoided, but in even better communication. But I think there would probably have been a conflict anyway, even if people have tried to do everything right, because there were different incentives, different ways of looking at the world. I think the starting point from Telenor's side was very often that we wanted to be fair with our partners. We respected that they had opinions and could have vetoes on certain things. But of course, we, as an operator, we wanted to have a strong influence. And in all fairness, if you look at the other group, they're strong individuals, very intelligent, and you know, they've been through quite a lot and fights and these things. They also want to have influence. And I think the thing that happened around the Ukraine became sort of a situation that came out of control. I'm 100% convinced to this date that it was wrong of VimpelCom to buy that company that they bought in the Ukraine. It was from a value perspective, it was nonsense. But I do see that it could look strange because we were owners of Kyivstar. But at the end of the day, we also offered to merge Kyivstar and VimpelCom later to end this. So maybe that's what the other party wanted all the time. And maybe that was not such a bad thing to do. But I think we could have come to that conclusion without all of this noise. But that's my personal opinion, that I could be wrong.
Александр Изосимов сказал, что, ну, как вы отметили, разные взгляды, да? У Теленора было желание выкупить полностью долю Альфы. И, соответственно, и они смотрели очень так долгосрочно. Да? И поэтому разные вот позиции. То есть Теленор хотел выкупить полностью долю Альфы, просто сам владеть Вимпелкомом.
Well, I think it was not a position that 100% of Telenor people would subscribe to, because yes, I think we would have in a way wanted to run it because we were pretty good at running businesses. On the other hand, I think you would have found a lot of people in Telenor who said that it's too much money to put into one country. So that our preferred solution would have been a harmonious partnership where we could add the operational experience and be listened carefully to that, and we could have Alpha with us as a partner. That worked actually quite well with VimpelCom region, where they came in through taking they wanted to take a risk, and they deserved to get the upside from that, because we were a bit hesitant to go straight into all the regions with our own money, so to speak. So it was not a major objective of us to buy them out. It would probably been very, very heavy to swallow such a huge investment into one market. So I think Alexander speaks from how it looked to him. And we did offer at some point, but that was also a little bit of the PR and negotiation tactics of the days, that okay, so we're being pushed, why don't we just try to push them back and say, all right, the one who pays the most buys the other one out, roulette thing that we did. It was a very difficult situation, I think, for both parties, and we were really not keen on having such a long conflict.
Вы были и в борде Вимпелкома. Александр Изосимов сказал, вот после 2008 года Вимпелком стал терять свои позиции. Да, но есть общее мнение, что из-за приобретения Golden Телекома, там был большой вот проблемы с кэшфлоу. Кризис был в России, но еще и большая смена руководителей была в Вимпелком в России. Да, Тарбахов, Немшич, Шматова, Кудряшов, Слободин. Да, они, по-моему, работали 1,5-2 года. И это немного ухудшило ситуацию.
There is an element maybe to that. Too much complexity is not necessarily good, and many management changes are of course not good either. So I think he has a point there. When we look back at history, there were probably too many changes, too many things happening at once. And then the crisis, maybe we should have been even more aggressive into building out 3G, putting more capex in at an earlier stage. But that's always very easy to see 10 years after. But I think Alexander has a point that complexity became much bigger and the management rotations were big. So.
А как вы относитесь к сделке по приобретению Golden Telecom?
Well, the idea around that was that there would be a convergent business. I think maybe it was too early. Now we are converging Comhem and Tele2 here, and we have come a long way with migrating people into one platform. But maybe 2007, 2008, maybe that was too early. Maybe they should have developed independently a little bit longer before taking that step. That's possible to say, yeah. At least it would have been easier for both businesses to focus on their core business. That's possible to think.
В 2016 году, в августе, вы стали руководителем подразделения крупнейших рынков Россия и Италия.
Yes.
Что это было?
No, it was basically, we had a dialogue about me joining Vimpelcom, which it was still called at the time, after I left Telenor, but I couldn't. There were so many investigations and parliament hearings around this case with the American authorities. So I joined in August when all these things were finished, and then we agreed that I would be then looking after Russia and Italy. Italy, we were about to merge Wind and Tre, and actually on that there were some people who had already done a lot of the work, so I came late into the process, joined the board. I was chairman of Wind, of course, but I was going to be on the board for Wind Tre, so Canning Fock and I would alternate on being chairman, and that happened, of course. What I didn't expect when I took that job was that Slobodin would have to resign because of the issues that had nothing to do with VEON. Mm-hmm. It was back in the days, and the strange thing about it, we had just signed a new contract with him. We wanted him to continue, and we had talked about it, and he was ready to continue, and then 2 weeks later this happens. So then I had to take over Beeline in Russia, which was never the plan, intention.
А что это было? Это потому что не нашли топ-менеджера на рынке? Или это был кризис менеджмент, что требовало, что и вы ушли в операционную деятельность?
No, the reality was that Mikhail Slobodin had to basically write his resignation that very day, because he couldn't go back to Russia. And the company couldn't be without a leader. So we just agreed, we had a 2-hour discussion, and there was, and people saying Kjell, and I did it, and I went over there. And in retrospect, it was a fantastic experience. So many really nice people, easy to motivate, good discussions, very, very nice experience to work with Beeline in Russia. And then, of course, the intention was always to find a permanent CEO, and I thought that we would have someone within 6 months when I went there in September 2016. And it took some time to find Vasil, and then he had a competition clause, so it became 15 months. But it was a nice time.
Почти 2 года, да.
Yeah.
Что в этот период? Вот в этот период, по-моему, был этот супер-ап VEON.
Yeah, yeah.
Что вы скажете по поводу этого проекта?
I think the history shows that it was a child of its times. Many people thought that they could leapfrog. The VEON app was not ready to go to the market. We had some quite substantial discussions around that. And ultimately it became a decision to launch it, which was not a success. And you know, in retrospect, I probably should have been harder on saying no. So we launched it, and we then basically it didn't work out the way it was supposed to. And I think companies can experiment and make mistakes, but this one was very big, and it impacted our customers in a way that I didn't like so much. And then we drew the conclusions, and VEON made some substantial changes to its governing structures, and then we moved on with less focus on these kinds of things.
А в этот период был проект вот по Таурку, объединение башен? Вот, то, что вывести башни в другую компанию, продать и сделать вот вроде вот.
I don't think I should speak so much about such things. It's quite near past. I mean, obviously we looked at what are the best models and these things, but I don't want to go into much details about such things.
Вы знаете, еще вот этот период, и у нас в Билайне, в Казахстане, появилась вот эта вот политика open space. И я помню, вы тоже были в open space. Сейчас, кстати, такого в Импелкоме нет, потому что я пытался попасть к Тарбахову, он сидит в кабинете, и к нему не проберешься. Как вы относитесь вот к самой культуре open space?
I think it has advantages and disadvantages. And when I came to Beeline to run it as a CEO, not as chairman, they took me to a huge office. And I said, no. Because Slobodin, he was sitting together with, in an open space with B2B. And I said, guys, I'm not going to sit in this huge office. I'm going to move down there where Mikhail was sitting. And sometimes we had partners or customers visiting B2B, and they would come into that open space, and someone would say that, yeah, that's the general director sitting there. They wouldn't believe it unless they recognized my face, because it was so unusual. But this was something that Slobodin already had started. So I think the advantage is that you democratize things a little bit. You show that you're not so focused on your own importance, your business card, and the formal authority. The flip side of open spaces can be that for some people it can be too much noise around them, it's difficult to concentrate. And when you take it all the way out with this clean desk and no fixed spaces, it can be challenging for people. So I think we should be aware of the pluses and the minuses. But I will never go back to sitting in a huge office. That's not normal. Although here at Tele 2, I very often sit in one of the meeting rooms because I have people coming in and out. So in a way, I'm in a hybrid solution.
Что вы еще можете вспомнить про Вимпелком России? Какие были там основные запоминающие там события или проекты?
I remember the birthday presents. They would make movies to me. A lot of employees would be involved. It was amazing how they would do this thing. That was fantastic. And of course, when people get together and have town halls, questions, and the dialogues, it was nice. Those things are nice. When you feel that people are interested in their job and they want to talk to you as a human being, not because of your business card, that's cool. That's also one of the things I really like with Tele 2. It's not high on hierarchy. Of course, someone has a better, higher title than someone else, but it's a quite organic situation. People speak openly to each other.
Шелл, вы были в Импелком России первый иностранец первый руководитель.
Nemchik was also...
Но он не был первым руководителем, был Тарбахов.
Yes, okay, in that sense, yes. Wow.
Сложно было. И вот
I think it helped me a lot that I speak Russian, because in the first town hall, I came there, I think, on a Wednesday morning, and I ran a management meeting, and the next morning or something like that, we ran a town hall for all employees. Mm-hmm. And I came into that, it was packed, and there were lots of screens, with the different regions of Russia onto the screens, the way they normally do. And I came on the stage, and I started speaking a little bit of English, and then I said, but someone has told me that since I've been living in Russia before, and also in the Ukraine, by the way, for 2 years, maybe I should be speaking Russian. And then I ran the rest of the meeting for 45 minutes to 1 hour in Russian, including the Q&A. And from then, I think that was a big part in them accepting me, because they felt that I was not some stranger that came down from the moon. I was actually someone who had lived both in Ukraine and Russia and could communicate with them. And we became close very quickly.
Ну, я тоже поделюсь, когда вы приехали в Казахстан и на нашем таунхолле заговорили по-русски, и на Q&A-сессии тоже по-русски, как вы сказали, все сразу восприняли, да, потому что вот эти все барьеры, все исчезло.
And that's so nice. People have a card that says CEO, but we are human beings. We have feelings, and we like, everyone likes to be received well. It means a lot. That's one of the reasons why people work. It's because it's social interaction and to enjoy spending time with others.
Да. А можно я поделюсь своим случаем? Мы с вами познакомились на одном лидершипе, и на гала-ужине мы сидели вместе. Я с вами говорил на английском, и мы заговорили о культуре, про театр, и вы перешли на русский. Я был так удивлен, скажу честно, я аж до речи потерял, и вот мы продолжили разговор на русском, когда заговорили о театрах. Да.
Well, I'm inspired by my wife, and of course, in my Telenor days, we were also one of the sponsors of the Bolshoi Theater. Mm-hmm. So we worked with them, and Dina and I now, when we moved to the Netherlands, we've continued that, but now with a couple of museums. So we have done some small sponsorship of a small museum, but we also done a bigger thing with the Rijksmuseum, where we participate in a big project they have, and this is very much down to her deeper understanding than mine, but it has given a lot. We meet a lot of very interesting people in a very relaxed way, not to this show-off thing. Everyone wants to be so fancy, or it's nice.
Шелл, в 2018 году вы взяли на себя обязанности операционного директора всего VEON Group. Mm-hmm. То есть вы нашли Василия Лацаныча, в смысле, пригласили Василия Лацаныча на выпилком России и уехали в штаб-квартиру операционным директором. Mm-hmm. Как вот этот переход с операционной компании в штаб-квартиру, что вы можете сказать?
No, that was okay, because I had that role at Telenor before, so it was very, very similar to me. Mm-hmm. It was a little different, because when I was at Telenor, Fredrik was 100% on to this. He had a couple of board memberships, but he was very much on to it, even though the autonomy was big. At VEON, we had Ursula, and Ursula and I always had a good relationship, and to this day. But she was very busy. She was on the board of American Express, Uber, ExxonMobil, and Nestlé. So that, in summary, is already more than 100%. But she works a lot, and she was available at the middle of the night when she was traveling. But she needed someone who could run the business. She didn't know telecommunications. She had worked with technology, but she didn't know telecommunications. So we divided this between ourselves, and she was very good at managing the relations with the board, and she was also doing the job on the scaling of the headquarters. She took special responsibility for it. She was out visiting the companies from time to time, but I spent all my time on following up the business, talking about, so how much capex are we going to spend in this country, and everyone wanted more, and making those things together with Trond, the CFO. We worked very closely together, and then of course in following up on target setting, going around working on the also on the compliance, running our town halls and speaking to people around these areas, which was critically important for VEON in the days after paying this fine and having the monitor on board. So we just needed to get that right. So for me, it was not a difficult transition. It was going from one role that I knew to another role that I've had before.
И как раз вы стали председателем совета директоров Билайн Казахстан.
Yes, yes.
То есть вы стали отвечать за все операционные компании, в том числе. И вы часто приезжали в Казахстан, каждый квартал, да, вы персонально приезжали и участвовали.
I think the Kazakh market became very interesting. I mean, I do remember looking at it. We saw Tele2 was growing quite fast, and then that merger came. And then, of course, we had Alexander or Sasha Kamarov did a great job. Again, he did a great job at Beeline, and the growth was increasing there. It's a good market. It was interesting to follow.
Да, в конце 18-го Билайн стал лидером на рынке.
I remember someone talked about the ambition that the company should set. So, of course, it's been impressive to see the development.
Я вспоминаю поездку в Чимкент. Была пилотная зона 5G на базе оборудования Nokia. Да? Вы помните?
Of course, I was driving by car from Tashkent to Chimkent. And you know that my wife grew up partly in Chimkent?
Вот этот мой следующий вопрос. Потому что когда вы выступали на русском с речью, а там это было на площади, много народу, и вы сказали, что ваша супруга из Чимкента.
Yes.
Это был, вы знаете, это был такой фурор.
Yeah, well, my wife's father was, of course, in the Soviet Union. He was not a very high-ranking guy, but he was a medium-plus ranking guy in the Communist Party thing, and had some good jobs. And of course, they were ethnically Russian, but they moved or lived their life in Ukraine. I think she was born in Kazakhstan. She was born and raised there and she is 25% Ukrainian. Her grandmother was Ukrainian, so this mix that you find everywhere. She said she had a very nice childhood there. And when we moved to Belgrade, she said that it reminded her a little bit about Chimkent in terms of the climate. Inland climate, hot summers, relatively short winter. So I remember we talked about that. And of course, comparing my childhood with hers, you would think that this is the West and this is the. She had more access to high quality fruits and vegetables than I had in the north of Norway where I grew up. But it was very nice to see that, and we were planning to go there again a while ago. But then of course the COVID came and we had to cancel. We even booked the tickets, so we lost the tickets.
Вы даже специально поехали заснять ее старый дом, вы рассказывали.
Yeah, but that house wasn't there anymore. It was gone. It was gone. They had a house they lived in, but it had been torn down and something else had been built there, some kind of small shopping center or whatever it was.
Возвращаясь к CEO VEON, какие у вас были тогда задачи основные?
Well, I was not CEO of VEON.
COO.
COO, yes. Well, it was basically to optimize the operations of the business. And I think my approach to this is always not only to think about the costs. I'm talking about how we can build value. And it's also about the go-to-market and how we can build our position. And it's not, the telecom industry has a tendency to always fight for looking like a hero the next quarter. And ideally, I'd like to get out of it. And I think we, to some extent, managed to do that at Beeline in Russia. I think the market in Kazakhstan worked very well out. And I'm happy to see, of course, the progress that was made in Pakistan. In Pakistan, we made real substantial progress, becoming a very clear leader and putting some distance to the number two, which was Tele there, because of a good transition to 4G. And even in Bangladesh, which was a very, very difficult market, Eric and the team, they were allowed to invest some money to build a better customer experience And they were able to get back into growth again, which was strong. But it was a very heterogenic group. I mean, you had the old Saviris businesses and you had the old Wimpelcom businesses. Algeria, of course, a very complicated market, very complicated to work in. And Mathieu and his team had to go through a big BSS, I mean, the support system change. So I think there was a lot of progress made. And in those companies that came from the Saviris business, we actually, in my time as COO, we had some quite good growth and success. And some of that came out of the good work that John Eddy did before he left VEON. Because he actually did a lot of, together with those CEOs, some very important preparation work. And without it, we would have been much weaker. Mm-hmm. So it was fun because most markets had their own particulars. They were not the same.
Хочу вернуться к Пакистану и Бангладешу. Там был и VEON, и Telenor. Mm-hmm. Я так допускаю, что тоже был конфликт акционеров между Теленором и Альфой. Что две компании конфликтовали. Та же история, что была между Киевстаром и Билайном в Украине.
But there was no conflict in Pakistan. And no, because VEON at that time. You mean when they bought the access from Saviris? Yeah, I mean, as when I was at Telenor, we were convinced that it was not a good idea to buy these assets. And if you look at it in retrospect, the value creation from that has not been good. I mean, the operational performance of Amir and his team in Pakistan has been really, really good, exceptionally good. But if you look at it from an investment point of view, what you pay to buy that asset and the way the Pakistani rupee has gone down dramatically, and if you look at all the challenges that there have been around Algeria and Bangladesh and the investments that have been made, then I think in retrospect, it's clear that the Telenor position was correct in terms of the return on it. But you know, the world could have developed differently, and maybe if the world would have had completely different development, they would have been right. So at that point of time, we were quite convinced it didn't make sense. But the shareholders, with a very narrow margin, approved that the transaction, and then it happened. But when I came to VEON as COO, that was history. Then it's all about making the best out of the situation and believing in the people and doing what we can to create value. And operationally, they all did a good job.
Вы покинули VEON.
Mm-hmm.
Почему?
I left on exactly the day when the DOJ came with their press release about the end of the monitorship of VEON. But I think it was a time. It was a time anyway. I can actually be quite open about that. When I was at Beeline in Russia, we bought Euroset. We took out those things, and I think that we can agree to say, you can say that the main shareholder didn't necessarily agree with all the things we did there, but they left it with the management, so they deserve praise for that. But I think it became clear that my approach to certain things and the approach that the main shareholder at the time had to run the business was a bit different. And in that situation, the manager needs to leave. It's very clear.
Понятно. И вы перешли в Tele 2.
Mm-hmm.
Ну, в большую и достаточно успешную компанию. Благодаря чему вас пригласили, как вы думаете?
Well, it's hard for me to say, but of course some of these people know about me from the past. Mm-hmm. Some of the people on the board and other places. Maybe, you know, after all these years, maybe some people think that I have a decent reputation and of delivering. I wasn't sure that I was going to go to another telecom operator. I was actually talking to someone else at the time when the Tele2 thing came. And I was thinking that could be fun to do. But Tele2 is a good company, and it fits me very well. I have some roots also in Sweden. I'm Norwegian, but I have 2 children from my first marriage who have grown up here, and they are now both students. They are almost finished. They have 1 more year left for their master and bachelor, and I know how Kinnevik operates as a shareholder. I have a good view on the people on the board, the people that I knew. So we came to a conclusion about that relatively quickly.
Вы знаете, я вот сейчас спрашивал у шведов, которые здесь работают. Они говорят, они не знают других топ-менеджеров из Норвегии, которые заняли такие высокие позиции.
Oh, there is one. I mean, you have the CEO of EQT, this investment company owned by the Wallenbergs. He's a Norwegian guy, very, very successful. But yeah, you're right. I don't think on the stock exchange for the top 30 to 50 companies, I don't think there is any other Norwegian, for whatever reason. Maybe Norwegians like to be at home. They don't go out and seek
Они сказали, прямо сказали, это гордость норвежского народа.
No. Actually, I think, in all fairness, you will struggle to find people who know who I am in Norway, outside of the telecom industry. I'm not a public figure in Norway.
Какие сейчас позиции у Tele2 вообще на их рынках?
We have a very strong number 2 position here in Sweden. We are you could say number 1 on the TV side. And today, actually, we had a launch. We historically been an aggregator of linear content. Now we have launched the full packages where we also have streaming with Viaplay. Very, very good cooperation, and we think we can build on that model. So the TV business for us is very, very strong, and we don't invest a lot of money into content, so it's sustainable over time. And then, of course, we have a strong broadband position where we are still growing. We have a big coax network. We're upgrading that with Remote PHY, which basically is that you drive a fiber all the way into the building, and then you have coax inside the building. So it gives massive speeds. We have a strong B2B position where we're back to growth after having had significant negative growth as late as 15 months ago. So that's coming back. And we're, of course, very well known through the Tele2 brand and the Comviq brands in B2C, in consumer, where we have a strong position. So it's a very strong number 2 position. And given the network cooperation we have with Telenor, we have the most capital efficient model in Europe. And you can see that in the way we are able to translate revenues into cash flows, very, very strong. And then we have the 3 positions in the Baltics, where we are number 1 in mobile in Lithuania, with a very strong position. Number 2, and not so far away from number 1, but number 2 in Latvia, and we are number 3 in Estonia. And those 3 countries have delivered really well the last couple of years. Good growth momentum, good margins. So it's strong. All the 3 positions are quite strong.
Tele2 в России это сейчас Ростелеком. Но, по-моему, в следующем году заканчивается разрешение на использование Tele2. Что будет?
Yeah, of course, we will at some point stop there, and I think it would be natural for them to move to their own brand at some point. But you know, Andrei Patoka, who's running Tele2 in Russia, is a very, very good person. So, you know, these people are doing a good job. They are decent people. But of course, over time, we will not be exposed as a brand in Russia anymore. That's natural.
А по поводу Казахстана, там тоже используется Tele2, бренд Казахтелекомом.
Yeah, it's still there, and maybe it will be for some time. That's a more recent transaction, so it could be there for some time.
А еще такой вопрос. Я помню, Tele2 очень много строила бизнес-модель на базе MVNO.
But not now. All the businesses we have are mobile network operators. We run our own networks. Of course, we're sharing it in Sweden, but we own spectrum together, so we're a fully fledged mobile network operator. We don't run MVNOs.
И в принципе стратегию дискаунтера уже можно забыть, да?
Yeah, we are not a discounter in the market. We had 3 brands when I came here, but the third one, which was called Penny, we discontinued quite quickly. That was a discounter brand. I think we should cater for many segments of the market, but I don't see any purpose in running brands that basically sell mobile services for almost nothing. So the Tele2 position is convergence, very much towards the family and premium. The Comviq is about making it easy for customers, and you see the advertising is distinctly different. Appeals to different segments of the market, and in both we want to be much more digital over the next 12 to 18 months. That's the next challenge, next chapter for the company. But not with an app like that. We're going to do it comprehensively.
Шелл, вы работали в России, в странах СНГ, вы работали в западных европейской компании. Какое главное отличие между этими бизнесами, моделями, управлением этими компаниями?
Oh, that's not an easy question. I think I think the risk with this is that I have worked in Eastern Europe some years ago, if you forget about that period with Beeline. But I would say that it is easier maybe to get very close with people when you come a little bit further east. Maybe the collective, that the thing about being together there is quite strong. And I like that a lot. Netherlands is very individualistic. So I've never been running an operational business in the Netherlands. I think I would find that harder than running something in Kazakhstan or Ukraine or Russia or Serbia. The Serbians, when I was there, it was a smaller business. We were so close. And it was a very nice atmosphere. And here also, people are, the Swedes, they are very much also about building things together, but they are maybe even a little bit more individualistic than, for example, you would see in some other countries. But what I do like is that they are different. They are not all the same. You have to find that way that makes you both relevant and interesting to interact with for the people you work with.
Шелл, а у Tele2 сильные позиции, вы сейчас перечислили. Не скучно работать?
There are days that are not so fun. I must say that when I took this job and we ended up, I thought COVID would be over earlier. So it was not so fun to sit in the office and look at my computer every day and speak to people over the computer and running all hands meetings over the computer as it is to do things in real life. So that I felt was a little bit of a challenge, because one of the reasons why I want to do these things is I want to be with people. And at the peak before COVID, we would have 1,400 people in the office. We would have days throughout COVID where we had maybe 5% of that. And that makes the building look empty. So I'm very happy now that people are back again, and there are a little bit of queues in the canteen for lunch, and that makes life more interesting for me. So I think you need to motivate yourself for something new all the time, because if you only have one task that you think you want to finish, then when you're done it's no more fun to run something. So you need to set the next level. Something that we are doing now at Tele2. We have this business transformation plan that we're going to finish within the next 9 months. A lot of that has been done. But the next stage is, of course, when you're getting people over to the same platforms, is to start building those real digital journeys. And that is something that we need to get cracking on now. We are not going to start that job in 9 months. So you're building on the previous work and setting new objectives.
Вот сейчас я верю, потому что вы так с энтузиазмом об этом говорите, вам точно не скучно.
No, it's fun. It's fun when you see that. But some of these transformations can be tough, because a lot of people are involved, and people always want to get informed, and it is a challenge to transform from one way to another. And sometimes you see different management practices, people who are very much into agile thinking, which is great when you're a developer, but not so good if you're building a mobile network. So you have to kind of have that dialogue and come to a joint conclusion, and that can be challenging sometimes.
Шелл, у меня такой философский вопрос. Как сказал Герман Греф, руководитель Сбербанка, был мир до 24 февраля и мир после 24 февраля, и который был до, он уже никогда не будет. Что вы думаете по этому поводу? Какой будет мир?
I'm always the optimist. I think that over time things should always get better, but the situation now is of course very, very, very bad. And I've lived in both Ukraine and Russia. I just think it is tremendously sad. I think it was unnecessary to get into the situation. I think it's sad for all of these civilians who are getting killed, those who have to leave their homes, for the military boys and girls who are getting killed on both sides. And I just, there's no other way to call this than a war. This is not a special operation, it's a war. And it's really, I just don't see how this is going to make anything better for anyone. And then I think when this at some point is over, and I don't know what over will mean, time will show, there must be a point where we step by step get back to something more normal, because there are 140 million people in Russia and around 40 million in the Ukraine. It's 180 million people. That is, 40% of the population of the EU, if you compare it. There needs to be some level of stability at some point, and we need to be able to interact with each other. But I must say, I'm just sad about it. I don't have the solutions.
Шелл, а что бы вы хотели пожелать? Наши зрители — это связисты, простые люди и в Украине, и в России, и в Казахстане, и вообще во всем мире.
Well, I think I will go back to this purpose, because purpose is what drives people in the long run. Some people are driven only by money or business card, and of course that plays a role, but purpose is super important. And I remember those days when we were building connectivity for all with 2G networks and later on 3G, and I was reminded about this when we had COVID, how important we are for society to really work. So I think people who work with telecommunication industry, some people say, well, it's a low growth industry, not so exciting. It's an extremely important industry. And those who have been a part of this industry for many years to build it up in every country, to make it available for people out there, should be proud. It is truly what has changed the world. Think about all these companies that have become almost iconic over the years. Where would Apple be today without proper networks, without us building them? Where would Google be today? Where would Amazon be today? And whatever, Spotify, you can name it. Everything is built on these things. And I think that even though we haven't developed any of these companies by ourselves, we have played a big role in making people's lives more interesting and giving them hopefully more safety and ability to interact with those that they care about. And then of course we all need to look out for not sitting with the phone in front of us all the time. I don't think it's good for us, but finding that balance is going to be important. But be proud of what you've done.
Шелл, хочу вас поблагодарить за интервью, что в таком напряженном графике вы нашли время для нашего проекта. И спасибо вам за ваш вклад в отрасль многих стран мира.
Thank you. It was very nice to go down a trip down memory lane, as they say. So it's always interesting to remember. Thank you.
Спасибо.
Very good.